Okay, tonight we're going to learn the din of Mashiv, Haruach, and Morid Hageshem that we began saying on Shmini Atzeres. Now, there's two halves of the year. One half of the year we say Morid Atol, or Nusach Ashkenaz says nothing. And then in Baruch Aleinu, for most of the year we say what's called the same bracha. And part of the year we say the same Tal Umoto Levracha. Now, to understand this whole concept, in the land of Eretz Yisrael, rain during the winter is a blessing, rain during the summer is a curse. So therefore, when we daven for Eretz Yisrael, we daven for rain in the winter, and for no rain in the summer. We don't pray for local. We'll discuss that in a second. Officially, we daven for Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, like this, on the first day of Pesach, we start already saying in our Nusach Morid Atol. I mean, the Nusach Sfard of not only Sfardim, I mean, the Chassidic crowd that daven Nusach Sfard, they all, and Chabad and those things, and Sfardim, they say Morid Atol. Nusach Ashkenaz doesn't say Morid Atol. They don't say Mashiv, they don't say Morid Atol. They don't say anything. So when it comes to Pesach, on the first day of Pesach, we already daven for what's called Tal, for dew. What's interesting, on the first day of Sukkot, then we should be davening Mashiv Morid Hageshem, which is, by the way, not asking for rain. There's two parts. When we say Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem at the beginning of Shemon Esrei, that is a praise of Hashem. Ata Gibor, L'Machayim Meisim, all that. The first three brachas of the Amid of Shemon Esrei are praising Hashem. So we praise Hashem, Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem. So on first day of Pesach, we already start saying Hashem's greatness that He gives Tal, Morid Atol. But nevertheless, because Sukkot, it's not a good time to have rain anywhere. For a Jew, and even you have to sit in the Sukkah. So we don't even want to mention it at the praise of Hashem at the beginning of Sukkot. Sukkot is over, it's already Shmini Atzeres, the mitzvah of Sukkah is over, so now we say, Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem. When do we ask for rain? In other words, when do we say the same Talu Mator, which is a request for everybody says for rain? So in Eretz Yisrael, they start saying on the 7th of Cheshvan, the night of the 7th of Cheshvan. Why do they say the night of? Why don't we start right away? Matzoi Simchas Torah, like we do Pesach. We should right away say we're saying Talu Mator Levracha. So the Gemara says because all the Jews came up to Yerushalayim for the Shalosh Regon, for the 3 Yom Tov. It took the Jews 2 weeks to go home. In other words, the furthest distance of Jews was 2 weeks after Sukkot. It took them to get home, which was Zayin Cheshvan. There's a week until Rosh Chodesh, and then another 7 days. So therefore, the Gemara says, even in Eretz Yisrael, they didn't start asking for rain, a tefillah for rain, not a praise, but actually asking for rain, until Zayin Cheshvan. Because Zayin Cheshvan was when the rain was already good already, it didn't get in the way of the travelers. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, the minig is to do like they did in Bavel. Now in Bavel was a different type of land than Eretz Yisrael. So Bavel, they didn't need rain until 60 days after Tkufas Tishrei, which is December 4th or 5th, depending if the next year's a leap year or not a leap year. So, and why? Because in most of the countries they didn't need rain so fast like they did in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, Shulchan Aruch says the minig ha'olam is that we don't start asking for rain until outside of Eretz Yisrael, until 60 days after the Kufa of Tishrei, which again, which is a solar system, so it's December 4th or 5th. What? It's the 4 seasons. I forgot what the English word for it is. Huh?
Seasonal equinox.
The equinox. There's 4 equinoxes. So Tishrei, there's Tkufas Tishrei, Tevis, Nisan, Tammuz. It's 3 months apiece. So after 60 days after Tkufas Tishrei, so then we start asking in Chutz La'aretz for rain. Now rain already is not a klal, even though we don't, even next Yisrael, they don't begin until Zayin Cheshvan to ask for rain. So now the question is, as somebody asked, do we daven locally, do we daven for Eretz Yisrael? So the answer is, generally speaking, we daven for Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, the question is, and it's interesting, the earlier poskim did not discuss about the southern hemisphere. Why didn't they discuss about the southern hemisphere? Because in their times, no Jews lived there. Argentina, Brazil, this is what the poskim write. They didn't talk about it in the earlier Rishonim because no Jews lived there, so it wasn't relevant. Again, don't forget, you have Australia, South Africa, Argentina, Brazil, all the southern hemisphere countries. So halacha didn't talk about it because it didn't exist as far as Jews were concerned.
But they knew of it?
Sure they knew of it. The Gemara already spoke about when did science find out that the world is round? Now you weren't there then. Okay, how many years ago was that? 1600. So how many years ago was that?
About
400. Yeah. The Gemara in Pesachim talks about Kadur Ha'aretz. The Gemara always speaks about the earth. Kadur Ha'aretz, the ball. The Gemara already talked about 1,500 years ago, the Gemara, or 1,200, whatever it was. The Gemara already spoke about Kadur Ha'aretz. Zohar, I mean, I'm saying, but even in the Gemara, the Gemara talked about it, so they knew a lot of things. Okay, so bottom line is like this. So what happens now, people that live in the southern hemisphere, where winter and summer is changed. So do you daven like what you need, or do you daven like Eretz Yisrael? So, no, I can't say everybody, almost all the poskim hold, they daven like Eretz Yisrael. You daven like Eretz Yisrael. So in the summer, by them it's winter in Eretz Yisrael, they'll ask for rain. When it's summer in Eretz Yisrael, even though it's winter by them, they won't ask for rain. They daven mamish like Eretz Yisrael. There's tshuvas that the poskim write. The difference is what happens if somebody made a mistake in the southern hemisphere when they're supposed to ask for rain and they didn't. They don't have to repeat the Amidah, because for them. Huh? No, December 5th. No, because that's Bavel. That's Bavel. The Rebbe has a whole long sif about this in these dinim, explaining why Chutz La'aretz does like Bavel, because Bavel didn't need rain, and therefore they started asking for rain later. But I'm just saying that in halacha, in the more contemporary, I mean, a few hundred years ago, I'm not talking about today, a few hundred years ago, they already knew, Jews already lived there, and they're already discussing it. And the psak was, you basically daven like Eretz Yisrael, but if you made a mistake, you can rely on the fact that you're davening locally. Now, what happened?
You make a mistake, you never have to repeat class.
In those things, just in Saint Talmud. Yeah.
It's a common mistake.
90 tefillah, 91 tefillahs, no? But, okay. But now, what happens if somebody forgot Mashiv Haruach? They said by mistake murdered at all. So if you say murdered at all, you don't have to repeat. Because at least you said something. Murdered at all, you asked for something. Or you said a praise of Hashem. But let's say Nusach Ashkenaz, that just leaves a blank. So if they forgot to say Mashiv Haruach and Morid Hageshem, so if they're still in the bracha, they say Mashiv Haruach and Morid Hageshem. If they finish the bracha, they say Mashiv Haruach and Morid Hageshem. But if they went and Ta'ata Kadesh, then they have to start from the beginning of the Amidah. Or if they finish davening completely, they have to go back and redo the Amida again.
Why the switch doesn't relate to become September 23rd?
Because it has to do with winter and summer.
So aren't we relating to winter?
Now is fall, by the way.
Right.
It's talking about winter and summer.
The brachot,
Now what happened? Okay, no, you go by Israel. Now what happens if somebody American is in Eretz Yisrael on the 7th of Cheshvan? He's there on the 7th of Cheshvan, but he's going back to America 3 days later. What does he do? So the halacha is you start where you are. That means if you're an Israeli in America, you don't start until December 4th or 5th. If your American was in Eretz Yisrael, let's say they stayed 2 weeks after Yom Tif, and Zayin Cheshvan they're in Eretz Yisrael, then when they come home, they stop because they started already saying Mashiv, the Saint Talmutar. They continue saying the Saint Talmutar. But interesting thing, what happens is the guy's a chazan in America. So he was in Israel for the 7th of Cheshvan. He started saying the Saint Talmutar Levracha. Now 3 weeks later, he comes home and he has to say Kaddish, Yortzeh, whatever. He's the chazan for the Yomid. What does he do? So the din is, or the question is, an Israeli that comes here after Zayin Cheshvan, before December 4th or 5th, what does he do? So the halacha is, in his quiet Shmoneh Esrei, he says the Saint Talmutar, because that's what he's davening as an individual. When he's chazan, when he's representing the kohol, so then he has to do what the kohol does. He has to say the same bracha. What happens very often. We had it here in the shul a few times. There's a guy from Israel came davening for the Yomid, and in his quiet Shmoneh Esrei he said the same Talmutar, and when loud in the repetition he said the same bracha.
What do they bless for rain in the Musa? Won't you ask for rain there also?
It's basically a praise of Hashem. It's a praise of Hashem.
It's not like that considered as
It's not the, no. It's when you say in Baruch Aleinu, we're saying Talmutar, we're saying give rain. Now it's interesting. According to many opinions in halacha, we say Morid Atol, but many opinions in halacha say you're supposed to say Mashiv Haruach Morid Atol. In fact, the Magen Avraham holds like that you have to say Mashiv Haruach Morid Atol. But Lepero we don't. Most people don't. The Alter Rebbe in the Siddur writes we just say Morid Atol. That's b'chlal, to my understanding. I don't think anybody says when you bless it you say Mashiv Haruach Morid Atol. But you don't say Mashiv Haruach Morid Atol. You just say Morid Atol. So the advantage of davening with Morid Atol is that if you forgot to say Mashiv Haruach, because you mentioned Tal, which is still a praise of Hashem, so you don't have to repeat the Shmoneh Esrei. He's going back? No, I'm saying, but they're coming back. Then they continue davening without it. They say the same bracha still. Yeah, they go back like here. But if there would be the chazan there, then in the repetition they say the same Talmutar.
And if they're on the
I remember, I'll never forget, there are Israeli guys that used to come to the convention, Rosh Chodesh Kislev. So Rosh Chodesh Kislev is generally after the 7th of Cheshvan, obviously, but it's before December 4th. So I'm standing in 770 in the Rebbe's minion downstairs, and the guy's davening for the Yomid, and the Chazan says the same bracha. In America, it's an American. So Rav and Eichel screamed out, the Saint Talmutar. Then he realized he's not in Israel, he's in America.
What about if you're in the air, between the two?
Between heaven and earth.
No, you're on the ocean, flying.
No. And what day is it?
Yeah.
If you're taking off from JFK, you're still saying the same.
You're going to Israel or from Israel? You're going to Israel? And until you land, you still have a din of the guy, the place you left. Not in this respect.
It doesn't matter where you are. We're here where you start and here, wherever we are, we both.
But we don't start saying the same Talamot until December 4th or 5th. In Eretz Yisrael, they begin the 7th of Cheshvan.
There's a lot of Israeli boys in New York now. Some of them stay till Zion Cheshvan, and they go back. But it could happen that someone stayed a few more days for, I don't know, wedding or something. And then Test Cheshvan, he's going back to Israel. He's Israeli.
So B'Pashtus, he says they say Talamot then.
He starts saying Talmud.
Because he's going back to live. See, then he has a din of... That's what it seems like.
Why is that different than? Why is that different than an American in Eretz Yisrael that comes back to America?
Why can't we do it from?
Because... Why is it different? No, it's a different because here he's an Israeli that's going back. He just didn't start it yet. Over there, he started saying the same Talamot, that you don't change. But he didn't start yet, so now we'll start.
What if we start with them at the test point? Why do you have to start in December? What's the reason for that?
Because again, the Gemara says in Bavel, they didn't need rain so much. Because they didn't need rain so much, they davened 60 days after the Kufis. And the Alter Rebbe, Poskim, right, that's everybody does that today. The only difference is, like we said, the guys in the southern hemisphere, what do they do with it? But that's a separate issue. Okay, that's basically it with that. Okay.